So in the last content, I already touched on, I kind of introduced what APIs were to you, the better picture of things. And I said we'll look at some of the popular APIs. For this one, we'll be looking at Flutter Wave. We'll go through the documentation. I will just walk you through how to actually go through an API documentation. This is particularly useful if you want to write a product requirement document, a technical spec, or review a technical spec. You want to even be sure of what is possible within the API you're integrating. So we are still going to touch on REST APIs in this case, but you want to be sure of what's possible within an API you're creating, right? So we'll look at Flutter Wave, we'll look at Paystack, we'll look at SmileID, we'll look at Doja, and we'll look at one other API. That would be Slack API, right? If you want to integrate Slack. I will share my screen and walk you through the process of actually determining figuring out how to work with the API documentation itself. Usually there are some of these third-party provide libraries that your developer can integrate into their backend or their front-end application and just call it from there. Some of them you have to use the REST APIs. Some provide an alternate form of APIs. Let's go through it together. Let's go through it together. So to get started, I'm just going to open Google. To get started, I'll just open Google and search for. So let's start with Flutterwave, right? Now I want to work on an application and I need to receive money from my users. I could use Paystack or Flutterwave, Modify. There are a lot of alternatives to use. I will show you how to go about using Paystack and Flutterwave, how to read the documentation, and how developers actually go around installing it. So the first thing you want to do is to identify, okay, what is possible with this application I'm using, right? So using Flutterwave, I know that Flutterwave allows me receive money from anywhere in Africa using the card, USSD, M-Pesa, GoMoney, using different formats. But I need to be sure and I need to go to the documentation to know what is feasible. So my developers are not telling me A, B, C. I stick with that. And when they start integrating, they start telling me that, oh, it's not feasible. So I just Google Flutterwave. I go to flutterwave.com. I can sit on the page, the endless possibility for every business, sell online, process payment. Interesting. I think this is what I'm looking for. I think this is what I need. So the next thing would be to search for its documentation. I could have also searched for Flutterwave documentation, but you want to go to the landing page just to be sure that the API does what you want it to do before you start telling your developers to integrate it. So going through it, I can just scroll down. Usually, if you don't see the documentation up here, which you should see, you can scroll down and you see the documentation among one of these down lists, API documentation, right? So let's open it in a new tab. There's also API reference and API status. The API status should just give us a overview of how the how the application is currently performing. Not every software provides an API status. Many do, so you can just know, oh. So if you're having a downtime after integrating, very important, if you're having a downtime in your application and you want to be sure whether it's your own application or some third party, you can check if you have a status page. If they don't have a status page, you can just check. Delayed delivery of OTP via email. We have identified an issue resulting in a delay in receiving OTP via email. OTP delivery registered email is delayed over 30 minutes. So yeah, you can see this August 8th, 1941. So you know if an issue is ongoing or it's not ongoing, right? You can also subscribe to it using Flutterwave. So you can also know whether the issue is from you or from the third-party provider. If it's from the third-party provider and you want to reach out to them. If it's from you, you want to fix it. If it's from the third-party provider, but it's not in the status page, you want to notify them as quickly as possible because they might not be aware of the problem. Away from the status page, let's go back to the development API documentation, developers documentation, usually under the developer section. So under it, like I said earlier, you might be like, oh, this for the dev or for the senior developers or for the tech lead to do. Fine, very much fine. But it's also important for it to also know how to read this thing in case the tech lead is not available, or even if it's available, so you can review his work and easily assess situation, assess the complexity of situations. So clicking on that, we can see we are taken to developers of Flutterwave.com. Different APIs will have different implementation, different URLs for their API documentation. The first thing you want to know is how do they even install the first thing every developer thinks of is how do I install this documentation? How do I install this API? How do I implement it? How do I install this API into our service, into our backend of front-end service? So let's just go to a quick start. I can say create an API account, create a Flutterwave account. Probably already done that. Or your dashboard, switch to test mode, get your API keys. If you remember the REST API section, I told you that as part of the header, sometimes you pass in the API keys, the secrets, and the secrets. These are ways for the third-party system to validate that you are the one actually making the request. If you are not sure of this, go back to the REST API where I talked about headers and watch it again to have more context. So you want to get these API keys from your dashboard, provide it for your developers. If you want to collect payment from customers, visit collecting payment overview. We'll come back to this. If you want to send money, visit making payment overview. Build your integration with one of our libraries, using our testing helpers. So Flutterwave already highlights some of the things you would want to do and some of the links you should attach, you should go to actually do what you need to do. So going to the collective payment overview, I can see, okay, so there's Flutterwave Inline, Flutterwave Standard, HTML Checkout, Direct Charge. You can read more on it to actually see which one will be more suitable for your application that you want to receive payment with. For example, Inline, mostly client-side integration. This is a JavaScript library on your checkout page that connects to your payment button. When you click on it, we take over and redirect you to the payment to be done, right? Standard is different, redirect you and back to be done. Different implementation. You can check the GUI, the interface, or the demo for it to be sure of what needs to be done before developers even actually start coding, because it takes time sometimes to implement some of these APIs. So when you're done with that, you see, let's see how to install Flutterwave Inline. So there are two ways to typically install it. The developers can just add this to their HTML documents. All right, so there's an SRC tag. You don't need to bother yourself too much about the code part of it, but it's relatively simple to implement. And when the developer clicks on Pay Now, it loads the payment in a modal. Quite straightforward and interesting. First, you need to install this inline library. So they reference the Flutterwave JavaScript file using HTML SRC. You can just read up on the JavaScript script tags and some of the other tags if you want to know more about this. You really don't need to know too much about it. It's not, but if you want to do, you can just Google the HTML tags. And once you install this and click on this icon to make payment, it automatically calls this method which should have been declared. So it's relatively straightforward for developers to install. So for me, you can just read through it, read the different documentation, have an idea of, they are mostly text, have an idea of what developers need to do, what kind of responses returned, the methods that needs to be called. So let's check the standards. For the standards, it's a little bit different. You make a post request. Remember the post I said? We use fetch in our REST API course. This is using GOT. GOT is another library for making requests. Let's just check it out. npm GOT. So you can see that GOT is another library, another package for making REST API requests, HTTP requests. This package dedicated for any JSON payload. So yeah. So we won't be dwelling too much on it, but you can see it calls the post method. Remember I talked about the post method. I'm pretty sure we are doing something related to posts, get the payment link. I mean, sometimes it makes it up, but you're calling the post method here. This is the headers that contains the authorization. Remember I was talking about headers in the REST API. This is the Flutterwave secret key, the one that you've been provided from your dashboard. You set it as your developer set it as an headers. Then this is the body of the transaction. It's called a little bit it's called something different with this. You don't think too much about it. The syntax are usually the same overall. Right? There's the body, there's the headers, and there's the URL. Right? Similar to what we worked with in the REST API. And then we get a response. So that's that. We get a response, a JSON response. So that's that for Flutterwave. Let's take a look at Paystack, right? Let's see if we were to use Paystack, how would that go? So like I said, first thing you want to do is to go to the Paystack. First thing you want to do is to go to Paystack's website just to see it, to be sure it does what you want it to do. In this case, you want to receive payments. So modern online and offline African payments. Okay, interesting. Delight customer and similar experience. Which are looking nice. So Paystack's developer section is here, forefront. So we can easily go here. Flutter, if you have to go down, Paystack is up front. Either works. I'm pretty sure if we go down, we'll also see a Paystack developers documentation. It's also here. So just search for the developer section to read more on the APIs. After searching on that, you can click on documentation or integrations. Let me click on documentation here. So you look at the Paystack documentation here. Let's look at the integration. Just some support. We'll not dwell too much on this. If to integrate into some existing tools. Let's look at the documentation, right? So we have the quick start to accept payment. So like next thing you want to do after going to the developer API page is to look at installation. Sometimes installation is implied. Sometimes there's an explicit sidebar icon that tells you about installation. So let's just go to the quick start, accept payments. Getting started, accept payments. In a nutshell, to accept payment, create a transaction using our API, our client library. So Paystack is a different approach. There's a pop-up. Like I said, you have to go through this yourself to have more context and more understanding. I'm just walking you through how you would actually go through an API documentation. So today you can see Paystack as the pop-up. These are some of the fields that will be required. There's the JavaScript. Right. Initialize transaction. Yeah, basically just You call the transaction method, you get a checkout link. You go through it, you have an understanding of what it can do. They support some other method. You can see on the sidebar, there's the overview, there's a subscription, to create a subscription, to create a plan. You make a post request. So let me change this to Node. You make a post request, you make an HTTP request to their endpoint and get the response from it. I'm changing to PHP. You can see it in different languages. So just go through the page. You might see some code. Try not to get overwhelmed with the code. Just assume they are code, but read the text. Usually the texts are very intuitive enough, usually, for you to understand most of what you need to do. Let's check out another one. Let's check out SmileID, right? So I go to SmileID. I Google SmileID. From there, I click on the page. I say, okay, verify the identity of customers across Africa. I can see documentation here. I could also see it down if I go down. Where's the documentation? Yes, under developer section, I can see documentations. When I click on it, I can see how SmileID works. SmileID allows you to verify a user's driver's license, passport, national ID, or whatever. So from here, I can see, choose a product, complete your KYC. I can just go through each of it, regulatory piece, see what is required of me, see what they need. Usually, you need your key for making the request as part of the headers. You need the body, and you need the URL. So let's just search for. So let's say I want to verify I want to verify a driver's license. How do I go about that? So I just scroll through it. There's a REST API section. Sign in the API request, products, document verification. I'm not very familiar with this interface, so I'm just going through it. This is how you kind of like go through it yourself, just searching for what you need. So overview, the document verification product lets you verify the authenticity of identity documents submitted by your users and confirm that the document actually belongs to the user by comparing the user's selfie to the photos on the document. To any document verification job, you require a selfie of the user and image of the document. Document type and country of insurance. This one must be one of the supported document type. Good. So you go through it, simple. You could also have seen it here actually, without having to go through those multiple steps. So available on REST API, Android. They'll give you some specification to use. Make a request. The request type is post. Remember REST API, we talked about some request type. This one is post. These are the requests. This is the request URL for sandbox. So usually when you are building out an API, you have the sandbox environment and the production environment. Production environment is the actual production environment, that is live, that actually users are consuming. And sandbox environment is what your developers actually use to test the application. So you don't want to be testing an application in a sandbox environment and in the production environment and be sending money to users, actual money. You only want to send fake money to users, right? So look at it, there's the posts, the different environments, different URLs for the different environments, test API, the Smile Identity. This is the body of the requests, Smile ID, client ID, partner params, an example request. And you get a response, 200, like I told you in the REST API, the response standards. Right? So they are not hard-coded, but it helps to know some of the standards. So 200 for an okay response, 400 for a bad request, which means something is wrong. Maybe the job ID or the partner params has already been used, or some other information is invalid. You can also get a 500 if something is wrong with the third-party provider. If you are very unsure of some of these things, go back and watch the REST API again for you to understand this better, for you to have more context on what I'm saying. But if you understand it, you can just move ahead. But it's very important when you navigate through documentation, you don't just skim through it. You actually read the text, because most of the information itself is written in the text of the documentation. You might see some JSON here and there, you might see some code here and there. Don't shy away from them. Just consume it. Just have fun with it. Right. And finally, let's look at Doja, for example. Doja is another verification solution. So you click on Doja. When I came here, resources, I kind of knew that their documentation will be under their resources. So we can just go to it intuitively. The more you do this and skim through, you should actually even just take out time to just skim through a lot of documentation yourself, just to have an idea of how some of this API works. As a PM in 2022, you can't actually build an application without APIs. It's almost impossible anymore, except you want to build everything yourself, which is not likely. Right? So this is Doja APIs, Nigeria, Kenya, validate BVN. There's a get request to get the BVN. These are the query parameters. This is the response. Right? So yeah, so that's for Doja. Finally, let's look at Slack. Right? You might say, oh, Slack does not really have it. Slack actually has an API for you to connect it to your own tools. So let's find out where Slack API is. I don't know where it is, so let's go by it ourselves. Since the API is not part of its core business, there is very low likelihood that the APIs will be on the top here. So let's go down. Where is the API? Where are you? Developers, yeah? So let's see. Explore workflow, browse app directory, create an app. So Slack APIs are like apps. Okay, so we have docs here. APIs. I found it. So where apps live. Did I find it? I click on API. Yes. So these are the APIs. They have a web API. They have an events API. Like I said, again, APIs allows one system to communicate to another system easily. So you can subscribe to some of these events or some of these systems to get it to work. You can go to the API, build applications on top of Slack. I mean, many products these days actually provide APIs for you to interact with. So just take out time, enjoy some of this on your own spare time. You can just pick out a new product like Zoom or Trello, Jira, and just, in fact, let's even check out Jira. Last one. Let's check out Jira's API. I don't know where it is, but let's check it out. I just try to find out where the API is, read through it, and see if you understand some of the API request and response. So Jira, let me go to Jira. Jira is an Atlassian product, another Atlassian. I hope I can find this API quickly. Probably even create a game where I just go to APIs and try to see how fast I can get an API. Documentation, developer resources. So let me go to documentation. So developers. And here we're in the Jira documentation. So this Trello REST API. So yeah, you can just go through these different products, Bitbucket, and just see which of them you want to use the API for. Right. So different systems, different APIs. Almost every system implements an API that you can also use for your own product. So I hope you kind of like enjoyed this run through. I'm hoping you actually select a few products on your own and go to the API. Just read through it, try to understand it. You might get overwhelmed at first, it might look very technical, but really these APIs are designed in a way that you understand it. Just know the major things. The popular APIs you're going to be working with are REST APIs. The REST API contains the URL, the body. The URL contains the web page or the link you'll be querying. The body contains information you'll be sending. Not every API contains a body. Some contain, some don't. The headers contains an identity information about yourself, and the method, which could be get, post, put, delete popularly. There are other ones, but those are most of the ones you're going to be seeing. See you in the next content. Bye.